tarde. Bom, o senhor gostaria de começar?
Okay, would you like to start?
Fique à vontade.
Please, the floor is yours. You can go to the pulpit if you want.
السيدات والسادة أيها الحضور الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني في هذا اليوم المشرق وفي هذا البلد الجميل أن أرحب بالمشاركين في هذه الجلسة المهمة ضمن أعمال منتدى البرازيل أفريقيا 2024 والذي ينعقد هذا العام تحت عنوان الاستثمار في البنية التحتية لتعزيز التنمية المستدامة في البرازيل وأفريقيا.
We were very careful in trend research and consultancy when we were overcoming at a long distance the active participation on this important forum. In cooperation and partnership with the Institute Brazil Africa, based on the conviction of the importance and strengthening of the cooperation in research based to face global challenges. Reflecting the partnership in both sides of the Atlantic among the countries of Africa and Brazil on the one hand, and the Persian Gulf, which is very important from the strategic point of view. This happens in a time where there is a great need of opening broader horizons to reinforce the world cooperation led by study groups in several parts of the world to serve efforts on the states and reach development for all peoples and societies, especially in the countries of the global south. So AI has gained in the past 5 years great international momentum, and the investments in several activities speed up the demand for development of tools and technology. In the midst of this international momentum, it's important to share the visions among different researchers when they look at the future of this AI and its effects in the things in our world. Our interests are interconnected and problems are more complicated. The achievements of AI, of what we are so proud, offer innovative solutions for many of the problems that the humanity has suffered in the past. However, the challenge is still there, and it is key before us, as we have mentioned, achievements in countries that are raising and need to strengthen their capacity of development, especially in the African continent. The narrow connection between digital transformation and applications of AI, we can say that promoting digital inclusion of individuals, families in Africa, and increasing the capacity of countries of that continent for digital transformation represents a great entry door to be benefited by the achievements of AI that is projected to the future. This is a good news at this point. And the recent report of World Bank confirmed that digital transformation now leads development in Africa, with more than 150 million African people with access to broadband. Between 20 and 19, and 22, and the increase of 115 number of internet users between 2016 and 2021 in Africa, and with more than 191 million people receiving digital payments between 2014 and 2021. With digital inclusion, we hope that African countries can quickly achieve the sense of financial families with AI offering a product. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, foreign investment plays an important role in building capacity of the countries to reach the achievements of AI. United Arab are #1 in terms of growth in Africa, and the growth of their investments in the Brazilian economy, as well as their initiatives and partnerships at international level to promote digital economy in Africa, including partnership between Microsoft and G42 group from the United Arab Emirates, investing billions in development of AI in Africa. All this shows clearly the role of UAE in reinforcing the capacity of this region that is so important in the world to develop their infrastructure and speed up their capacity to be benefited by modern technology, without mentioning the support to the capacities of inclusion and financial capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, and all of you that are here, we from the trends of research and consultancy, we believe in cooperation and building bridges between the research centers in Africa and in Brazil, and maybe this cooperation create opportunities, overcome challenges, open doors and ways for the creation of a prosperous future for this region and the whole world. Although we really appreciate the invitation to take part in this forum, we hope that the discussions in those panels will include an accurate vision for researchers in understanding the perspectives that we have achieved with AI and its role in the support of digital inclusion in our countries. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for being here and your participation in this session. And I'd like to thank again the researchers involved in the works of this important international forum, and I feel really pleased with that. And thanks God, all God's blessing to all, and thank you very much.
Vou começar aqui com o
Thank you very much. I will start with Nana Mafu.
ganês, mas já está tempo suficiente.
He's from
no
Ghana,
Brasil
but
pra
he's in
falar
Brazil for a
português,
long
não é
time,
isso?
so you can speak Portuguese, can't you?
Eu queria começar o
I'd like
seguinte, como eu
to
falei,
start
a
saying
a
internet,
inteligência artificial
AI,
pode ser arma ou
can be a
ferramenta.
weapon
A
or a
gente tá aqui
tool,
pra
and you're
falar
here
de
to discuss
ferramentas.
solutions, tools.
O que o senhor acha
What
que
do
já
you
tem? O
think,
senhor já viu aqui
or what
nesses
have you
13
seen
anos, né,
in
morando no
those
Brasil?
13
Nesse
years of
tempo
living in
todo,
Brazil?
principalmente nos últimos anos, o que o senhor
Especially in
viu
the past
aqui,
few years,
que
what
tá
have
sendo
you
usado no Brasil,
seen
que pode ser
that
reproduzido
can be
no continente africano, se
replicated
tratando
in
de inteligência artificial?
Africa in terms of AI? Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the team of Brazil Africa Institute, Professor Bosco, inviting everyone for this forum once again. Last year, I was here. It was so wonderful, and this year is wonderful too. So let's give a round of applause to Professor Bosco and his team. Vinicius, I think AI is being so trending in the world, and it makes sense that it's like this, because when you look at ChatGPT, how the world has changed in terms of impact of several elements on how people use AI to do things. Here in Brazil, I think Brazil has an interesting position in terms of experimenting with technology, especially in the financial aspect. So financial sector in Brazil is becoming one of the first three with regards to experimentation of sandbox in terms of fintech. Central Bank is innovating a lot as well. So Brazil is becoming more and more a very interesting place in the financial world. But in addition to that, there are some things I'd like to highlight. Recently, in the state of São Paulo, through DETRAN, the Department of Transport in the south, the tool that we use, AI, integrated with several other tools to make it easier, the purchase of cars in a state that happens in minutes rather than weeks. So this work, they have given an award in Gartner in the public sector this year, or last month. So this is an example of something that I believe that, like if 2 days ago I was in Cairo, and 1 week ago I was in Cape Town. So in any city in Africa, today you can see the number of cars you have in the city. So thinking about a tool such as the one that DETRAN has launched, I think those things can make a difference in Africa. The most interesting case that I know is that African countries can think and try to make grow in scale is like we have PIX, which is a Brazilian system of direct money transfer. So PIX could be used today to move money from one African country to another African country. If you believe it can take weeks or a month to transfer money. So I think tools like AI could be used to improve this kind, to enhance this kind of bank transfer in Africa. Thank you. Michelle,
Can you hear me?
can you hear me?
Let me ask you one thing. Can artificial
Yes,
intelligence, can artificial intelligence boost growth and enable better trading relations between African countries, Brazil, and the world?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me join you. I wish I was in Sao Paulo. I am in freezing London, so I'm feeling a little bit jealous of all of you there. But thank you so much for having me. 100%, I think artificial intelligence is going to actually transform the continent of Africa and is actually going to open up trading lines between Africa and Brazil and the rest of the world. So it's absolutely phenomenal. Why do I say that? I think, first and foremost, what AI is doing, what we're seeing on a daily basis, right? It doesn't matter what country you're in, what we're seeing on a daily basis in terms of the transformation we're seeing with the application of automation, right? At the end of the day, artificial intelligence really is very much about automation and using those tools that you've just heard about, really to transform and make things a little bit more efficient, right? So in terms of opening up supply chains, for example, right, very important with artificial intelligence, with better data, and using AI to actually read data sets, you can actually improve the supply chain and have more transparent supply chains. You can also be able to ensure that trade between different countries happen a little bit faster because, again, the data is able to feed in information that you would not had otherwise, right, in the past. Great example, Brazil, big sugar trader, right? You trade your sugar between Brazil and Africa. The data set, the information that you use throughout the trading process is absolutely critical in order for that trade to happen efficiently. Bring in artificial intelligence that can help, with actually reading sort of data sets and making sure that the trading relationships work a little bit more efficient. So again, when you think about it, right, in terms of global trade, what are the main barriers that we do face around global trade is very much the complexity of trade, right? Very complex, dealing with so many players, dealing with so many counterparts, you're dealing with paperwork, you're dealing with a whole range of complex issues. So again, with the technology, which really we need to think about it in the context of it too, is there really to help to make that a little bit more seamless. Now, in the context of Africa, some of the barriers that we do have, of course, issues around things like logistics, moving goods from A to B. ensuring that systems or paperwork can also be digitized, right? Reading paperwork, how do you know that certain paperwork is also valid? Authentication, right? Everything I've described so far, in the supply chain, of course, requires some sort of technology. I think you put in automation there, then you start to see a bit more efficiency. But apart from the supply chain, the other benefits that it brings in, I think, with artificial intelligence, is also the fact that, with AI, again, we can do things a little bit more speedier, right, a bit faster. So when you're looking at healthcare, for example, right, and we're able to diagnose things a little bit faster, right, and more accurately. I think accuracy is important. With AI, you get accuracy because the data sets also inform you. So I think for me, it's very, very exciting because at the end of the day, it doesn't just open trading opportunities, but it also provides opportunities to create new jobs, right, new functions. And that, of course, is going to be able to help to generate better GDP and better revenues for countries. A quick example I could probably give is, we have just obviously released this report looking at the Ghanaian market and what the impact of things like technologies like AI and blockchain and smart contracts, what that can do to help the economy speed up. Can it actually bring economic growth? Can it help with generating better GDP? And through our research and our studies, what we've seen is actually in Ghana, by the application of the rollout of what we call digital trade, which includes the utilization of things like artificial intelligence, could actually result in generating GDP of over $70 billion. I think that is something that's very, very important, and that's something that can help that economy to grow. Now, that's just one of the African countries. We've got about 54, right? And you put that scenario, and then if you allow the technology to be applied to be able to do trade between, say, Ghana and Brazil, again, you're going to see transformation and growth there. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. E como o Michel falou sobre trading, eu vou puxar aqui.
Well, since Michel talked about
Francisco Javier
trading, I'm going to ask Mr. Francisco Javier, who is the director of Las Palmas Port Authority. So how can we implement AI to improve the management of ports, since we're talking about trading, about the circulation of ships between Brazil and the African continent? Can we discuss the application of IA to improve the management of ports?
Bueno, en primer lugar agradecer a la organización que me haya invitado a este foro. Muchísimas gracias. Bueno, en primer lugar me gustaría situar dónde está mi puerto y cuál es la relación que puede tener en este foro. El puerto de la Luz de Las Palmas está en el Atlántico Medio, justo enfrente de la costa oeste africana,
the West African coast,
puerto que pertenece al sistema portuario español, con legislación española, seguridad jurídica española y digamos que estabilidad económica europea. Pero sí que está justo enfrente de la costa de Marruecos.
So you are in front of Morocco, which is the entryway to the entire West African coast. So I think we have a very important role in terms of bilateral relations between Brazil and Africa, in terms of logistics and all the goods that can be traded in between the continents. Now, having said that, 80 to 90% of the goods that are navigating in between the countries goes through sea, and the development of a country is also related to the economic development that comes from ports that are used to make the move these goods, the imports and exports. So AI in this scenario is essential, and we are immersed in a project that through AI is coordinating all of the agents that operate in the ports, or where there's some type of logistic. You have boats and ships that come in, and then we automatically identify which equipment is needed to unload the merchandise on that ship, and in that way there is a very important role that these agents have in being connected through AI. And in that sense, we are able to have gains in terms of the efficiency of the port. Actually, this can also generate, have a very good impact on the environment. This is something that is a trend also, obviously, but a boat that comes in to a port, if there isn't the equipment available to, when that boat or that ship comes in, if we don't have communication of the parameters of what is needed for that boat or that ship to come in, they might have to, they can come in slower until the port is able to receive them, and so then they will spend less fuel, and all of this can be done more efficiently with the use of AI. Obviously, there will be some barriers to the adoption of this technology. The first one is economics. These are tools that are expensive, so you have to have the specific agents operating this. So the customs agencies and all the companies that are operating there have to be connected to the customs system. And so in that sense, the financial side can represent a barrier, but I think that it can be surpassed with the use of these public-private partnerships. And part of the cost can be offset by the private sector. The second barrier is in terms of the information. All of the employees that will be working at the port, they need information to be able to work with these new applications and new that use AI. So this might be, at the moment, this might be a deficiency, but AI can be adapted for the management of ports. Well, now I'm going to ask our professor and Dr. Matilde from the Afro-Brazilian Lusofonia. We were talking about the diaspora and the event that was held in Salvador this year, and so we were talking about the design of an Afro-Brazilian university. So how can we think of this university without AI it's part of the curriculum? Probably not, right? Well, good afternoon to everyone here. Thank you so much to the staff of IBRAF, João Bosco, Matilde, Denise, and all of the staff who invited me to be here. And I have practiced coming here in other editions. Last year, I was all ready to come to the event, but I had something unexpected come up, so I'm very happy to finally be here. I'm from São Paulo, but I've lived in the northeast of Brazil for 10 years since I became a professor at UNILAB, which is the University of International Integration of Afro-Brazilian Lusofonia. And in these 10 years, I had the opportunity of living in Bahia for 5 years and now for 5 years in Ceará. And considering that UNILAB on purpose was established in the interior, the rural areas in these states, and it's 2 hours away from the capital, and that makes a difference in Brazil, in the rest of Brazil. Here in São Paulo, sometimes you can spend 2 hours driving around the same neighborhood, but in the state of Bahia and Ceará, where I have been living, in 2 years you can be out in the countryside in a completely different reality than what you have in the capital cities. And I, just before the session, I was commenting with Vinicius that at this event of the African diaspora that we had recently in Salvador, it was sponsored by the African Union and the Brazilian government, IBRAF, and the city government of Salvador. I was part of the civil society in that event, and I met many people there who had been in other events of government forums with you. I previously, between 2003 to 2006, I was a minister in President Lula's government. But I commented with Vinicius that there were two things that are more innovative that were discussed at this diaspora forum. Actually, many innovative things, but two or three really stood out to me. One of them was that there is a movement in Brazil that was begun by part of the academic community at UNILAB, and this movement is seeking to develop a university in between Brazil, Africa, to advance the universe of UNILAB, but UNILAB is working with the Portuguese-speaking countries, the Lusophone countries, and so this project would extend to all of the African continent with the mission of also having a political aspect to this relationship between Brazil and African countries. So that makes a big difference, Brazil and Africa. Somebody who really pointed that out to me, that there's a difference between Africa and the African countries. And professor and anthropologist from Congo, he is a friend of Brazil, and he's had this relationship with us in 50 years already. And he said, Matilde, you need to stop being reductionist. Brazil, just saying Brazil, Africa reduces the debate. So we need to say Brazil and African countries with all of its diversity, all the diversity that's involved. And for sure, AI in this process of giving a new meaning to this relationship between Brazil and African countries. I'm correcting myself here. AI is surely an important tool considering the challenges and the possibilities also that this offers. The curriculum of Brazilian universities, the curriculum is very focused on the developed world. All the structure of the curriculum historically has been from a very Western point of view and from a developed country approach. And our recent Brazilian studies, very few are familiar with the experience of UNILAB and UNILA, which is focused on the relationship between Latin America and the Caribbean countries. And both of these universities came about at during the same period, UNILAB and UNILA. And our main mission is to develop curricula from the standpoint of the South global area of the map and the South-South relationships, and UNILAB focuses on an curriculum that has the Afro reference. And so I think we can have allies, and we need to know how to use this tool and removing what are the challenges or problems that it might bring to us. So I would like to end my word saying that other important challenges in the previous panel, they were mentioned, so valuing the representation of women, not only in terms of numbers, but also in actual participation and having a share of in the market. And I'd like to add one more issue, which is the racial aspect. It's hard to have this fluent discussion with these immediate exchanges without considering the racial inequality and considering the way that we work in Brazil.
parte da desigualdade estrutural.
The racial inequality is structural in Brazil. It's hard to deal with this in our agenda with African countries, but I would risk to say that this view of Africa's poverty is one facet of racism. And so, as I said before, in terms of bringing how AI can bring Brazil and the African countries together and thinking with our project at the university, but there's one more aspect that I wanted to mention, which is about when in the event that we had about Africa and the African diaspora, we talked about creating an agency working based on the Pan-African, or having a Pan-Africa approach in Brazil and headquartered in Salvador. And so I think we can pull many of these strings together in this way. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a great word from Professor Matilde. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Al-Ali. Why are the Emirates so interested in AI, especially investing in the African continent? Well, first of all, in terms of the UAE and the importance of AI these days, we live in a world, we are experiencing an AI revolution, and AI is part of everything today, and I think it goes back to it's changing almost everything in our everyday life. And so based on this, we started to realize how important it was for the UAE to have this development of AI. And our country was one of the first to use AI. We can see that there is great development in technology, digital technologies in the UAE, and also the ambition of spreading these technologies and taking this to other places around the world, and explore or invest in AI. We consider how it can and how to limit cyber challenges and crimes, and so we at the UAE, we are great supporters of Africa, and we are also one of the main global investors in Africa. The total, we have a $44.5 billion invested in Africa, and AI is one of the main areas that we have invested, because this leads to the strengthening of the development in Africa. Well, there's two different aspects about this: the professionals that are going to work with this, and regulations, a clear regulation to I
just said it's so important to say, like, to talk about a clear regulation around artificial intelligence. Do you agree? And why? So, Michelle?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. I just...
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
You cut off a little bit. Sorry, your question was on regulation?
Yes. Do you think it is so important, a clear regulation about this topic, and why?
Yes, absolutely. No, thank you. Thanks a lot. No, absolutely. I think with artificial intelligence, it's one of the most important areas when it comes to regulation. Some of the reasons, actually, our last speaker outlined a little bit. The beauty with technology is that you can shape it as you want. So if you're a developer like some of us, you can build, write code to develop, to do certain things. And I think it's very important that, with artificial intelligence, especially the speed at which we are developing AI models, is that we make sure that there's safeguards and protections that are put in place as these models are being built. We've had cases where, AI models have been developed and have been used and used in scenarios where it's caused a lot of problems and discrimination. I think most people would have heard about those incidents. We also want to make sure that we have regulation in place where we don't breach certain elements, even with artificial intelligence and data use. And what I'm talking about there is the importance of, for example, data privacy and privacy for people. It's very important that we ensure those models that are built within an environment where regulation is quite clear-cut in terms of what can be done, what cannot be done, and how you also protect data and the data of individuals as well. Now, in the African continent, as some of you might have heard maybe from colleagues earlier on, we have actively been working to come up with very clear regulation to support countries within the African continent. And this goes even within the umbrella of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which I'm sure you might have talked about it earlier today. And under the AFCFTA, as we call it, we have come up with particular regulations, be it around investments, be it around digital trade, for example, to ensure those protections and safeguards are there as you utilize and take advantage of technologies like artificial intelligence. And why is it important? One, of course, we don't want to create difficulties, or we don't want to, for example, have situations where there's abuse of the technology, right? There's abuse or misinformation, or there's misrepresentation, which we've seen in many cases with the use of AI. Again, we want to ensure that, we do offer protections and safeguards for people who are utilizing the technologies. And so it's important, for example, to come up with very clear data privacy rules, for example, to come up with, cybersecurity systems as well, which can be embedded with artificial intelligence models as well. And I think in order for us to ensure that we fully leverage the technology, that there is ethical considerations as well in terms of the use of those technologies. What are you using the technologies for? How are you building your models is very, very important. The lady who just spoke, I have to commend her because, everything you were saying in there about the importance of inclusion is also ties into the element of regulation, right? So if you're building models and all those models are being built by one subset of society and we don't have inclusion, we don't have, for example, women participating in building models of tomorrow, then we're going to have challenges on how we use those models. So it's very, very important that even within the regulatory frameworks that are developed, we have considerations around inclusion, we have considerations around data use, we have considerations around how those models that have been built and developed are actually deployed in the countries. We have been working, of course, beyond the African Digital Trade Protocol, which is, I'm really happy, that it's, of course, been ratified by member states in Africa. Across the pond, again, just recently, we just come from the UN General Assembly, where we have had, 193 countries sign the Global Compact, Global Digital Compact, right, to ensure that, again, we're looking at safeguarding and regulation and protections around, an important area such as artificial intelligence. So I think it's paramount. If you do not have regulatory frameworks in your countries around artificial intelligence, I think you're leaving room for really dangerous scenarios where people can take advantage, right? And you can build models that later on you might find difficult to actually control. And then it's also very, very risky, I think, for society, because again, anybody, if I decide today I'm going to go and write code to go and develop an AI model that's going to disrupt and sort of disrupt the supply chain of an X company, that can be done. And so you have to offer certain safeguards to ensure that that does not happen. So very, very critical, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nona,
we discussed some of the models and examples that can be replicated here in Brazil, replicated in Africa. But being very practical now, what are the difficulties? Which are the hurdles that need to be overcome so that we can really make this partnership happen? The Brazilian models connected to AI implemented in African countries. Well, I think there are several things that makes this relationship between Brazil and African countries more difficult, as she said. One of the things that makes it difficult is education. When I mention education, I don't mean the regular courses like primary, secondary school, and university. The professor mentioned the European American system in Brazil, system of education. Let me give you a practical example. When a couple starts to develop a relationship between men and women, or vice versa, when they plan their first trip abroad, they always want to go to London, to Paris. Oh, that's good. But even those who are Afro-Brazilians do the same. So generally speaking, one of the things that makes it difficult is the lack of knowledge about the richness and diversity that the African countries have to offer. That's the first point. So generally speaking, forums like this help a lot to open people's minds, saying, hey, there are interesting, nice things going on in Africa from the commercial side and the personal side of knowledge. That's point one. But now, Portuguese also is a little bit difficult because when you look at Africa as a continent, there are places such as Angola, Mozambique, Cape Verde, Guinea that speak Portuguese, but most of the countries speak French or English. In some cases, even the countries in the north that speak Arabic also speak French, such as Morocco, Tunis, and others. So, although we can learn more languages, like I speak Portuguese and English, I am from Ghana, but I am starting to see that maybe I have to speak French as well. You know, so language can be a barrier because we have to encourage people to speak more languages. And above all, each one of us have to try to educate ourselves, because we have so many information with AI. We talk to ChatGPT, and I think that each one of us can study using those AI tools to get to know more opportunities that we have in African countries. So there are practical things such as the language, general knowledge, as well as, I don't know if it's initiative or willingness, but that's for sure you need both. Initiative and willingness to help people to understand that today, I think everybody who knows better social, economic, geopolitical movements are starting to understand the power you have in African countries and the possibilities that African countries have more and more with all the areas in the world, such as sports, politics, infrastructure, and so on. So these are practical things that I think it could help. Goodwill is a good start. All right, Francisco, very quickly, how can we do what can be overcome to really implement AI tools in developing countries? We're not talking about rich countries, you're talking about countries with limitations. So in practical terms, what are the challenges that we have to overcome to implement those tools in this country, such as Brazil and African countries?
los objetivos ya creo que antes
The goals.
quedaron mencionados por mí. Básicamente,
The goals I
implementar
mentioned
la
before
formación de las personas
are
que lo van a usar en los
implementing
países de destino,
people that are going
obviamente,
to use AI
y
in
la
destination
parte
countries,
económica
but
y
also
financiera que hay que-
in
el
economic and
obstáculo que hay
financial
que
parts as
salvar.
well.
Esos países
They
de
have to
desarrollo,
see
pues,
what have to be
probablemente no
overcome,
tendrán los
such as
medios financieros
developing
suficientes
countries will not have the
para implementar
financial
todas las
resources enough
herramientas
to
que van a ser
implement
necesarias. Por
all
tanto, hay
the
que
tools that are
buscar
necessary.
fórmulas,
So
como dije antes,
we have to try to
público-privadas, de manera
find
que,
ways like
otros
PPP
estados o el propio gobierno de ese país
in
pueda
such a way
ayudar
that we
a
can
los
with other
diferentes
states
entes a
or the government of
hacer
this
frente
country
a las inversiones
to
necesarias,
help
porque
us to
si no se
face
van a quedar atrás
investments.
en el
Otherwise,
desarrollo. Eso
we
está
will
claro.
be
Y sí me gustaría hacer una última
left behind
mención.
and we will lose momentum. And
Nuestro
another
puerto,
thing is
lleva
that
a través de
our
una fundación que tenemos muchos años trabajando
port,
con
through a foundation that we
países
have,
africanos,
we
en concreto
work with
con los
African
puertos de esos
countries,
países de West
with
Africa,
ports
y
of
somos
Africa,
plenamente
especially in the
conscientes, como
West.
decía la señora
And we are fully
compañera Vanessa,
aware,
que hay un
as
gap,
it was said
muy
before,
grande que
that there
salvar
is a
sobre
need,
la intervención de la
a
mujer,
great need
en
in
esos
terms
puertos.
of
Hay
the role
una-
of women,
un gran desequilibrio
involvement of women in those
entre hombres y
ports
mujeres que trabajan
causes
en
a
esos puertos,
great
también en el sistema
imbalance.
portuario,
There are very few women
nacional del
working
país
in
del que vengo,
ports
pero no tanto como en los
in
países
my
africanos,
country
y
as
en ese
well,
sentido
not so
llevamos
much
años
as in
haciendo
African countries,
una-
but for
una serie de
years
acciones
we've been
trayendo a las mujeres que
working
trabajan
on a
en
number
esos
of
puertos
actions
a
to
que visiten
value
nuestros
the
puertos, a
participation
darles
of women in
formación,
those
y eso le
ports
llamamos
so
la
that they
Semana de la
can
Mujer Africana. Por tanto, sí
study,
que somos
and we
conscientes
we
de ese
have the
desequilibrio y
week
estamos,
of African
trabajando en
women,
ello.
so we are aware of this
Meus caros,
challenge
muitíssimo
and we are
obrigado.
working towards
Infelizmente, o
that.
nosso tempo já acabou.
Okay, I have no more
assunto
time. That's such an
interessantíssimo,
important,
importante que nós poderíamos ficar aqui
interesting
muito mais
topic. I
tempo,
could spend much more
discutindo.
time
Quero
discussing
agradecer a
this. I'd like
todos
to
que
thank you
participaram.
all.
Michelle,
Michelle,
unfortunately, we don't have more time. Thank you very much for your time and all your answers. E muito obrigado, pessoal.
okay, folks, thank you very
A gente
much.
tem outro painel
And
ainda,
very
Carol.
soon we'll have another panel.
Continue aí. Obrigado, hein? Obrigado a todos.
Carol, floor is yours.